The cabin was nestled deep in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and thick underbrush. It was a place of peace and solitude, a retreat from the chaos of the world. But for Jack, the cabin held a darker meaning. He had inherited the cabin from his grandfather, who had built it with his own 2 hands. Jack had visited the cabin as a child, and had fond memories of playing in the woods and fishing in the nearby river. But as he grew older, he began to see the cabin in a different light. There were rumors about the woods surrounding the cabin, stories of strange creatures that lurked in the shadows and whispered secrets in the night. Jack had always dismissed these stories as nothing more than myths, but as he stood in front of the cabin, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. As he stepped inside the cabin, the musty smell of old wood and stale air filled his nostrils. The cabin was small, with just 1 room and a loft for sleeping. A wood-burning stove stood in one corner, and a small table and chairs were placed in the center of the room. As Jack began to settle in, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He tried to brush it off as his imagination, but the feeling persisted. He decided to take a walk in the woods to clear his head. As he walked deeper into the woods, the trees began to grow closer together, and the underbrush became thicker. The air grew colder, and a mist began to settle on the ground. Jack realized that he had lost his way and didn't know how to get back to the cabin. As he wandered through the woods, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. He heard strange whispers in the trees and saw movement in the shadows. He tried to run, but the underbrush was too thick. He was trapped, alone, and afraid. As night fell, Jack stumbled upon an old campsite. A fire was still burning, and there was a tent set up nearby. He called out, hoping that someone was there to help him. But there was no answer, only silence. As he turned to leave, he saw movement in the shadows. Something was moving towards him, slowly and methodically. He tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He was frozen, paralyzed with fear. The creature emerged from the shadows, revealing its true form. It was tall and lanky, with long limbs and a distorted face. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Jack tried to scream, but no sound came out. The creature reached out with its long fingers and touched him, sending shivers down his spine. He felt a coldness spread through his body, and he knew that he was going to die. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the creature vanished. Jack was left alone in the woods, shaken and terrified. He stumbled back to the cabin, vowing never to return to the woods again. As he lay in his sleeping bag, he heard strange noises coming from outside the cabin. He tried to ignore them, but they grew louder and more persistent. Then, there was a knock at the door. Jack froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, but the knocking continued. He slowly got up and approached the door, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. As he opened the door, he saw the creature standing before him. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. He tried to run, but the creature was too fast. It reached out and grabbed him, pulling him into the darkness outside. Jack struggled against the creature's grip, but it was no use. He was powerless against its strength. The creature dragged him deeper into the woods, its long fingers digging into his flesh. As he was being dragged, Jack saw glimpses of other creatures lurking in the shadows. They were grotesque and twisted, their eyes filled with hunger and malice. He then realized that he was not the only one to fall victim to the horrors of the woods. The creature stopped in front of a large tree. Its bark was gnarled and twisted, and its roots stretched out in all directions. The creature pushed Jack towards the tree, and he felt himself being pulled towards it as if by some unseen force. As he got closer, he saw that there was a small opening in the tree's trunk. It was dark and foreboding, and he knew that he should run. But he couldn't move. He was transfixed, caught in the creature's grip. The creature pushed him towards the opening, and he felt himself being sucked inside. It was like falling into a deep, dark hole, with no end in sight. He felt himself being pulled deeper and deeper into the darkness, until he was consumed by it. Hours later, a group of hikers stumbled upon the cabin. They found it abandoned, with no sign of Jack anywhere. They searched the woods, but they found nothing. Jack had disappeared, swallowed up by the darkness of the woods. From that day on, the cabin was known as a cursed place, a place where people disappeared and were never seen again. Some said that the cabin was haunted by the spirits of those who had died there, while others believed that it was the work of some ancient evil that lurked in the woods. No one knew for sure, but everyone knew to stay far away from the cabin in the woods. For Jack, it was too late. He was lost forever, consumed by the darkness that lurked in the shadows.